sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to a podcast called My Sister's a Therapist. You may have heard about it from a comedy show that you went to because your therapist told you about it, and it's My Sister Laura. Spotify might have pushed you on it. To the 2,000 people who stopped in and listened to our episode about following your dreams, thanks for visiting.
And thanks for following your dreams.
On this program, a stand-up comedian of many years, Virginia Jones, talks to her sister, a licensed marriage and family therapist, Laura Ryan.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to the pun-isher, Virginia Jones.
Oh, yeah. These are getting really good. On this show, every week, one of us has prepared a topic and the other one doesn't know what's happening, just like in life. And this week, it's my topic.
And that means I'm the dummy.
I don't like to think of it as the dummy. I like to think of it as the unprepared one, the one who's surprised, has a little surprise for them. So this week's topic comes out of a lunch that I had with dear friend and ardent listener, Wells.
Hello, Wells.
Hello, Wells. She asked if we'd ever done a show about workaholics.
That's a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
It certainly is. And I said, that's a great idea.
You mean the comedy television series from the early 2000s?
Those guys, it turns out, weren't.
They're the opposite of
that was an ironic, satirical title. You got your alcoholics, you got your cinnaholics, who are, of course, addicted to cinnamon.
You get your baby head sniffaholics.
Oh, I've struggled with that. Sometimes it's hard to put the baby down.
It's a tough one to kick.
And you got workaholics, which is not in the DSM, but is an observable phenomenon.
When was this first coined? Where does this come from?
Thanks for asking. The term workaholic was coined by Wayne E. Oates, who is a psychologist and pastor. It was a portmanteau of work and alcoholic. The term alcoholic was still pretty new then. So I think they were just putting everything in front of aholic.
I'm a chocoholic, except with booze.
Right. Kathy is a chocoholic, and our dad was a workaholic.
And a famous alcoholic would be Betty Ford.
The concept of workaholic came about in 1968. Mr. Oates wrote an article on being a workaholic. And then his 1971 book, Confessions of a Workaholic, The Facts About Work Addiction. Let's talk about key characteristics. Excessive time spent working. That's in the eye of the beholder, but it's generally agreed that over 50 hours a week is going to lead to health and mental problems. Difficulty disengaging. They struggle to detach from work even during leisure time. Workaholics frequently think about work when they're not actively working. And I think in the American culture that is revered. Oh, he's a real workaholic.
Yeah, it's like that Quaker mentality of working and taking all of your energy and time towards being pure and working too much.
Well, and of course, if we base our whole society around the worship of money, being a workaholic is a good thing. Even though in the short term for a company, it feels like it's good to have the person on your team who works all the time, never rests. It's bad because in the long run, they're going to burn out or they're going to have a workplace meltdown. They're going to be argumentative. They're going to have poor mental health and physical health. They're going to make it hard to be in the office because when you're tired and you're stressed out and other people don't do what you say, you flip out on them. And that's not pleasant for anyone. Workaholics can also have relationship problems, strangely, from neglecting their friends, family, and social life. And reduced life satisfaction. Workaholics may experience lack of enjoyment in other aspects of life, such as hobbies and leisure. What we're experiencing now as we watch the collapse of our economy and watch two grown men have a slap fight on the internet, which affects the Dow Jones. We've got the hustle culture phenomenon, which is the new sexy workaholic. You're encouraged to have a lot of jobs, have a side hustle, have a second side hustle, be an entrepreneur, and just work all the time.
I had a friend send me a YouTube video where the guy was commenting on a video where this basic office worker dude was talking about how he makes $25 an hour and how at some point in time that was a living wage. But the YouTuber's take was, you got to be working like 60 hours a week to make it work because you're going to get time and a half. Buddy, what? Why is that where your mind goes?
Why is that the baseline? Why is working yourself to death the normal thing? We all deserve a living wage, no matter what our job is. Everyone who is working deserves to make enough money to live, and we don't, and we aren't. This is from an article from Forbes magazine, 7 Signs You May Be a Workaholic by Amy Morin. 1, you think of how you can free up more time to work. 2, you spend much more time working than originally intended.
No.
You work in order to reduce feelings of guilt, anxiety, helplessness, and or depression.
Sometimes.
4, you have been told by others to cut down on work and you don't listen to them.
No.
You become stressed if you are prohibited from working.
No.
You deprioritize hobbies, leisure activities, and or exercise because of your work. I have done this, but I don't do it now.
I have done it. I think I'm deprioritizing exercise for other reasons.
And 7, you work so much that it has negatively influenced your health.
In my life, I have, but not in a long, long time.
If you answered yes to any of these points, you may be a workaholic. The study concludes that about 8% of the Norwegian workforce is addicted to work. Other studies have suggested about 10% of the average population in other countries are workaholics. If you are self-identifying, 48% of employed individuals consider themselves workaholics in the US. Some studies have estimated a smaller percentage of the general population, around 10%, but the self-identified rates are significantly higher.
I'm going to go with that's probably more true.
66% of Americans say they don't have work-life balance.
Absolutely true.
77% have experienced burnout at their workplaces. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it. A couple times I've interviewed with very fancy companies, and when they show you around the office, even though you don't have a job yet, they're just like, look at all this cool stuff that you might not get. Frequently, they show me the gym. I have asked on the interview, how often do employees use the gym? Because it's sometimes a bright, shiny, clean gym. Everything's in nice condition. And the fact is that no one uses the gym because they don't have time to, but they have the idea that they could use the gym.
The gym is always empty, in my experience.
But reading through this list of ways you can tell you're a workaholic, a lot of them remind me of our dad. So if you're playing the drinking game, enjoy a beverage. One of my favorite dad workaholic stories was in the 80s at Texas Instruments. He was in his cubicle and he looked at the clock and it was 6:05. And he says, well, I'm just going to work for a little while longer and then I'll go home. And then it was 10 o'clock and my mother called his office to find out where he was, but the clock had stopped in his office. He just kept looking at it and going, oh, well, it's not time to go home yet. And he just kept working.
I have several favorite dad workaholic stories, but the one that's coming to mind, Mom said we had a neighbor across the street who asked her if dad had left her. She said, what do you mean? She said, I went to go get the trash bins. Your husband's car wasn't there at 9 p.m. And then I went out to do something else in the morning and your husband's car still wasn't there. And it was 6:30 in the morning. She said, oh, he came home after 9:30 and left before 6:30.
That had been normalized to my mother. Oh, well, that's just how it is. And what a helpful neighbor. I see that your husband's not around. Did he leave you? Japan is famous for this workaholic tendency. They have a name for it, which is koroshi, which is translated into overworked death. The most common medical causes are heart attacks and strokes. There's a ton of cases, but one of the first ones that got publicity was this guy, Matsuri Takahashi, who took his own life after consistently working over 100 hours of overtime a month. In Japan, 10,000 suicides a year are believed to be related to overwork.
That's a lot.
Companies' response to this, they've started having half-day Fridays or leave at 3 p.m. Fridays. Toyota Motor Company limits overtime to 360 hours a year. And at some offices, public address systems at 7 p.m. say, go home.
I've also heard in Japan that they've worked really hard to make managers at least leave their office and turn the lights out, even if they're going to go home and work some more, because they want to let the staff know you're not supposed to be here.
I've definitely had jobs where you needed to stay until your manager left. And the managers were all having a low-key competition to see who worked the most. I would just be in my office trying to find stuff to do because my boss hadn't left yet. In the morning, everyone would get in and compare notes and go, I got home and I worked till 11 p.m. And we got a manager who came in and said, why are you guys working so much? Don't you like your families? Don't you enjoy your spouses? The whole department looked at each other dumbfounded. That just wasn't the culture.
You were encouraged to do that because your boss was not turning the lights out at 5 o'clock and leaving.
One case, the worker said that they told their boss that they were depressed and anxious and that they were working too much and they needed to reduce their hours to below 50 hours a week. And their boss said, we're shorthanded. Everybody's depressed. You just need to get on medication and keep working. Thumbs up.
That feels healthy to me.
It really is healthy. Can you be a workaholic without a job?
Yes.
Compulsive busyness. And you can do this with a job as well.
I had a friend like that. Her job itself was not super time consuming, but she was always busy. And that was almost her personality, was being busy all the time.
And I have done this as well. A pattern of behavior where individuals feel an overwhelming need to fill their schedules with activities, be it chores, book club, or artwork. Wells and I were talking about art. She's an artist and she feels compelled to be productive every minute of the day because she says she has this idea in her head that people are going to be like, oh, that lazy artist is just laying around.
I mean, she's not wrong. People will judge her. That's the nature of capitalism.
The struggle is to not let that bother you. People are going to have whatever opinions of you that they have. Here's a list about signs of compulsive busyness. Constant need to be doing, difficulty saying no or setting boundaries, seeking validation through productivity. This has been me. I have done this.
That one hits.
Feeling restless or empty during breaks, struggling to relax and enjoy leisure time. I think that's me and my dad.
Also my ex-husband.
Masking uncomfortable emotions, using busyness to avoid facing difficult feelings or issues. What are the reasons for that? What causes that? There's seeking external validation, avoiding uncomfortable emotions, fear of being unproductive, feeling guilty or inadequate when you're not busy, and then low self-esteem. These are all low self-esteem.
I remember my ex-husband on the weekend was so difficult to hang out with because I really do use my free time to relax. I think because of our father, I have been really compulsive about being as lazy as possible in my free time. And he would rip the sheets off the bed at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday because that's when we do the washing. That's when we make the bed. But I'm still sleeping though.
Right. I'm still using the bed.
Right. And he would be vacuuming. I mean, it was very much like my childhood. I remember our mother would be out at 6 a.m. vacuuming the whole house and smashing dishes around. We weren't supposed to ever really rest, I don't think.
No, this is an idea that's very popular today, like that YouTube influencer that you saw, the idea that you can optimize your time, that you can read a book while you're exercising, while you're plotting your cryptocurrency purchases. You can always create another income stream. It's just a way to work yourself to death. I'm not proud to say last week I had a terrible cold. I had had it for several days, wearing a mask to work. I kept going into the office and my partner said, I wouldn't go in if I were you. And I said, workaholic tendencies are what I have received from my dad. This is my dad's legacy that I'm living on. It doesn't occur to me not to go to work most of the time.
I have the opposite. I have to go to work because I don't make any money when I don't go to work. And I often wish that I had days off. The appointments that are set up, they don't go anywhere. I still have to help those people. I still have to make the time.
And you don't have the luxury of an 18-year-old fast food worker of having someone else take your shift.
Actually, you just reminded me of a terrible memory. I was working at Positive Changes Hypnosis. This is when my workaholism was beaten out of me. I was very ill. I was vomiting. I was really, really unwell. I called my boss and said, hey, I can't come in today. I'm really, really not well. And he said, but we have a sales appointment that you need to make because we really need the money. And so I went in and I remember laying in a chair, just fighting off the vomit. The person didn't even come in. They no-showed. So I said, you know what, bud, I'm going home. And he clapped me on the back and was like, wow, your dedication is incredible. And I just thought, this is dumb.
This is dumb. This is a waste of my time because, spoiler alert,
they laid me off with no notice.
I think workaholic tendencies are a holdover from boomer culture where you would leave high school, leave college, get a job, stay in that job. That job would provide for your whole family until you retired. And that is not the case anymore. There is no reason to be beating your head against the wall for any company. You are making money for someone else.
And I was working 9 to 8. Often I would fall asleep during my evening appointments. I kind of developed a drinking problem. I just want to escape reality. I can't do this. And then at one point, I really did say, I'm moving to Europe. And I did. I can't do this anymore.
In my last job, my job in general was very awesome and cool in a lot of ways. But my immediate manager was a very nitpicky workaholic person. I had COVID. You were allowed to stay home when you had COVID, but I was still expected to work. I was online bleeding a meeting and really having a hard time. And she said something and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have a fever of 100 degrees and I am doing the best that I can.
There's literally no good reason for me to be doing this right now.
You know, I got through it. My father's spirit animated me like a
reanimated corpse.
I have been talking to people about, I have an exercise ring that I'm not going to name because they didn't pay me any money to do that. But I love it. And one of the things that I most love about it is that it tells me when I'm getting sick. Having my phone tell me that I'm sick for some reason helps me justify changing my schedule and changing my plans, because otherwise I'll just muscle through it. And my worst habit is I would be sick and then I would call off of work. And as soon as you know you don't have to go to work, you get this flood of endorphins and relief in your body. I'm actually not sick. I should go in.
See, I'm very, very comfortable absolutely resting. I think because my job is so hard. And I also feel like if I showed up half dead, which I'm not going to say I haven't done, if I showed up, for example, with active COVID, would I be doing what's best for my clients? I remember actually, I did try to work from home when I had COVID. I only did 2 appointments. And then because we were also having a freeze, my internet went out, so I couldn't see any more appointments. And I was so relieved. The next week, I saw one of the clients that I'd seen online. Oh, thank God. You looked like death warmed over.
So let's talk about generational tendencies. We talked a little bit about boomers and how workaholic was the norm. And I think that's why it started getting recognized in the late 60s and 70s. You're just looking around and seeing people suffering. I've worked a lot of jobs, and a lot of people have come and left at those jobs. No one ever says, someone worked here 9 years ago who worked so hard and really kept all of us afloat. And we just appreciated her so much. When you're gone, you're gone. When you're dead, you're dead. No one is going to sing your praises for being obsessive about the workplace.
Have you seen the movie about Schmidt?
I haven't, but please tell me all about it.
You'll get really depressed because it'll remind you of your father. The plot is that this man has been a high-ranking sales guy in this business for years and years. And you watch him nearing retirement, and he's training up this new guy, and he's showing him all the charts and graphs and all the really essential stuff. He has a binder. I'm going to give this to you when this is all over, and this will be your binder and you can use it. And this guy retires. They have the party, etc. And he goes back a week later to just hang out because he has no life. And he walks by the dumpster and he sees the box of all of his essential stuff. And it was just in the trash. I think about that moment probably once a week. I wish that our father had seen that movie.
Let's talk about what causes workaholism, excluding economic factors. We're assuming here that you don't need to work this much. There's plenty of people who have to work just to survive. I think our father got some of the only positive reinforcement in his life from being at work. It's also where he had his only friendships because he was not great with friends. There's a thin line. I think you should be friendly in the workplace, but when workplaces start being like, oh, we're a family, that's just a clue that they're going to take advantage of you.
P.S. That's what the people who laid me off after I gave them everything I had, that's what they always said. We're family here. Oh, really? The last time I checked, I didn't go to work on a Friday. And then somebody asked me at 5:00 if I had anything to wrap up. And then when I said, no, I think I'm done, they said, okay, get your stuff. You're out of here. I said, well, what's the severance going to be like?
Bless you for even knowing that word.
They said, you can go ahead and collect unemployment.
At one of the startup jobs that I worked, the owner was my boss's boss, and she didn't always understand why we didn't want to work late nights, that we didn't want to work over the weekend. I would get messages from her in the middle of the night saying like, I was thinking this. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get on that. One of the people who worked for her had to explain, they don't have the same passion as you do because it's not their company.
They don't own this company.
They want the company to do well, but they're not personally profiting from the company the same way you are. So they're not going to have the same commitment.
That's sort of what led me to where I am today, because I remember my boss used to always say, hi, Dave. Hi, Dave. I love the way you work for me because it's like you own the company. You have so much pride in this company that it's like you're one of the owners. Except when we sold it, did I see any money from that?
They did not forward you any of the profits.
I remember being in college and having this crappy waitressing job, and we had a quote unquote pizza party that we were all required to attend. It was a great pizza party where we all got to repaint and touch up the building.
That's pretty fun because it's a lot cheaper to buy pizza for 10 people than it is to hire a guy to paint a building.
Well, they also had to do it when the building was closed. We got to start painting at, 10 p.m.
That does sound pretty good.
They paid me my $2.13 an hour though.
Oh my gosh. Is compulsive busyness, is workaholism, is it disguised anxiety?
I think it's escapism. If we're specifically looking at our father, he wasn't an athletic person. And I think that hit home for him. I think he wanted to be a macho athletic guy. And I think this was the only way that he could play masculine because of his asthma and other health issues and the way that his mother would not allow him to play any sports at all. He wasn't really a macho guy. So he thought, okay, I'm going to smoke cigarettes. I'm going to play pool. I'm going to do all these things that look like a macho guy. And one of them is work myself to death.
And he did. He at one point had a heart attack while he was working late at night, and his partner was like, well, I think you should go to the hospital. He's like,
he was just going to go lay down.
I think I'm going to go lay down. I'm a little tired. He did, spoiler alert, die in the parking lot at work. Pretty fun.
He was on his way to a meeting.
He had to go to a meeting. And do any of his workplaces say, you know who we really miss? Is this individual contributor? No.
And I remember when he was dying, I mean, he wasn't actively dying, but he was casually dying for about 10 years. And I remember his girlfriend asked me if I could babysit him for the weekend because she didn't feel confident that he could take care of himself by himself. I went up to Houston and hung out with him for the weekend. Of course, we went into the office because what? And I remember this was after a lot of twists and turns in his career, but we're sitting in this office, his final office, I guess. There's pustules of paint on the wall, and there was this ant colony kind of climbing up the wall and cracks in the ceiling. And I thought, wow, my office is like 10 million times better than yours. And I work about 1/80th what you were.
He didn't die rich, and he didn't die with any sort of accolade. What was it for?
I don't know, because his funeral was obviously very depressing. It's a funeral, but the fact that almost everybody who talked to me about him, all they could talk about was his work ethic. That's pathetic. That's not a legacy for anything.
And there's nothing wrong with enjoying your work. Understand that it's just one component of your life.
And when I work with people who struggle with addiction, one of the key markers of addiction is that it's interfering with the other parts of your life. If you're working to the extent that it is interfering with your social life, your physical health, any of those components of being a person, then it's a problem.
A thing that I have struggled with is in Hollywood, in Hollyweird, as they say, La La Land. Everyone always has more stuff that you can do as an individual artist. You've taken your acting class. Have you been making videos every day? Have you been tweeting a lot? There's just this unending litany of unpaid labor that you should be doing to promote yourself and to further your career. And it's hard to not do that stuff all the time. But I became aware that I was getting compulsive about it, and it wasn't really doing me any good that I could see. I've just had to really take a look at what I want to do, what I enjoy doing, and what I'm going to leave behind and say, I'm working full time. I have this other career that I've made for myself, but it can't be my whole life. That's not enough.
Because then that means there's no space for relaxation and there's no space for relationships.
That was definitely something I struggled with. I would talk to other women about it. When do you have time to date? A lot of the times we didn't, which is what leads to terrible relationships with other comics because they're around.
I just saw this TikTok about Mindy Kaling and BJ Novak. She was obsessed with him, and I think she has 3 children with him, although she won't admit it. They both said when you're working on a show, you're just around the same people all the time, and that's who you end up hooking up with.
In generations, okay, we've got the boomers that are workaholics. That's our dad. Gen X was maybe the first generation to say, I would rather have a day off than a raise. I would like to have more flexibility. Millennials, I feel like their battle cry is work-life balance, that they really want to have leisure time, be able to relax and recuperate and come to work ready to go. And then Gen Z likes a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
They want to optimize technology in order to reduce their work hours. They are under a tremendous amount of financial pressure, as every generation since the boomers has been increasingly. Older people will see that as lazy, but I really think that they're onto something.
The thing I love about the Gen Z folk that I meet with at my office is that they just think of all this stuff as optional. Yeah. I just figured, why go to work today? I just want to go for a walk.
Bless them.
I think it's a lot more like the traditional work schedule that medieval people had. A medieval peasant, I can't remember the exact figure. At most, they worked 2 or 3 hours a day. Society didn't crumble.
And they had religious holidays every other week.
And they drank mead.
The 40-hour work week is an imaginary thing. it's a replacement for the
100-hour work.
the 100-hour work week, or let's work you until you fall into the ground.
Well, do you know that Ford created that? Some Nazi sympathizer. And his thing was, we need to give them some time so they can buy out my cars. Literally, that's why we have a 40-hour work week, because people were cutting all their fingers off. And also they didn't have time to drive around in the car that he was making. Honestly, I think 25, 28, maybe max should be what people are working in order to do your laundry and make meals.
And how I've always lived my life is I've always either had time or money, but never both. Either I'm working a lot and I have money, but I don't have any time to spend it, or I'm not working at all and I'm broke as a joke, but I have plenty of leisure time.
Right. And when I was working that 9 to 8 job, I was loaded, but I was spending so much more money on convenience foods and other things because I didn't have time to do anything else.
In my industry, in apparel, frequently work hours are insane. And I had another boss who used to say, like, we're not curing cancer. We are making play clothes.
Exactly.
Everybody can go home. It's sometimes hard to take 2 steps back and say, the weight of this company is not on my back. The weight of this industry is not on my back. I am an individual contributor. And I want to do well, and I want to bring a lot to my position, but it doesn't require me being here for 12 hours a day. One time in LA, when I was on the hunt for a job, I had always heard the now defunct Forever 21 was a terrible place to work, but that meant they were always hiring. At one point, I talked to somebody about a gig there, and they were saying, yeah, this is really a position for people who've just gotten out of college. So the hours are 8 to 12. I'm like, oh, so it's a full week of half days? And they said, I don't know, 8 a.m. to midnight. Don't worry, you get a lunch break and a dinner break.
Oh, wow. What a gift.
Cool. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Circling back to that first job. Thanks, Dave. It got even worse because I was on a salaried job, but I was working insane hours. And I remember missing somebody's birthday party because we had this sales thing that we were going to run it on Monday. Why did it have to be run on Monday? Why am I working all weekend for no reason?
This is a deadline that you've made up and it's not real.
Right. That job was the last job that I worked hard at.
At my current job, when we have meetings, we'll go around the table and people will say, I'm out of the office. I'm taking a day off. And they'll say, but I'll have my phone with me in case of emergencies. And I always say, why? There's no such thing as an apparel emergency. Whatever's happening, either someone else will make the decision or it'll wait until you get back. Everything's going to be fine.
I remember my boyfriend at the time got really sick and he said, I really need to go to the doctor, but I don't feel confident that I can drive because I'm just really not well. So I was annoyed because I thought I would take an Uber and I wouldn't ask anyone for anything. So I was trying to accommodate him. So I canceled my first 2 appointments. And my first client was really mad at me. You should just come in, or at least you can talk to me in the car. And I just thought, no.
While I'm driving. Interesting.
I'm going to drive with my boyfriend in the car and do a therapy appointment? Interesting.
That's not a violation of anything. Oh, well, just make him wear earmuffs.
And I'm going to do a really good job if I'm driving the car with my boyfriend.
I'll be listening really hard. So how do we treat workaholics? Let me guess. Therapy is going to be pretty high.
Well, I treat them like all the other aholics. I remember I was in couples therapy for a long time. The Imago way, if you want to reference this, listen to our Lego My Imago episode. My husband was an alcoholic. And I remember my therapist saying to me, are you sure your dad wasn't an alcoholic? Because all the things that are happening to you are the things that would happen to a child whose parent was an alcoholic. If you look at the features, what does an alcoholic parent do? They ignore their kids. They prioritize drinking over being with their kids, and they're completely absent. And my father did all that stuff. He just didn't drink.
That is fun,
isn't it? If you are noticing that this thing is affecting the other parts of your life, you need to start cutting down or cutting out.
Whatever it is, if there is any one thing that is affecting every other part of your life, you need to figure out how to get that back in balance and try to take a step back and look at your motivations. Why do I feel that I need to get this project done today? Work late nights, work over the weekend. Is there really someone asking me to do it, or is it me?
And am I a pediatric oncologist, or do I just design women's tights?
The tights are going to get made. It's going to be okay. Laura, what are your final thoughts on this amazing topic of workaholics?
Brought to us by a lovely lady named Wells. My final thoughts are, I have been inspired my whole life by workaholism. I think it's affected me deeply in every possible way. I think it ruined my father's life. And I have used my father as a guiding light to make sure that myself and everyone that I know doesn't do this crap to themselves. I do this with clients all the time. Yeah, you can keep doing this, but I'm just going to show you the roadmap. It's dead at 65 and no friends and children who don't like you. If that's your hashtag goal, then let's do this.
Nailing it.
Let's do this thing. It will be at the expense of your health, your happiness, your friendships, your loved ones, all of your relationships. It's an addiction. It's a compulsion. And you have to ask yourself, am I doing this thing for healthy reasons? I have a friend who owns a business with her husband, and this chick has been needing to retire for at least, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3 years because she hates her job. She was saying to me, she was supposed to quit in the next 2 months. And now she said, well, the staff is really relying on me. And I said, no. There's no body on the table. You don't need to be there. They will figure it out. Your husband's going to still be there. The other employees will still be there, and they will figure out how to work without you. You don't need to be there. And the fact that you're telling yourself that comes from codependency and unhealthy belief systems. Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
My final thoughts is that my new favorite word is karojisatsu.
It sounds like it tastes really good, but it actually doesn't.
No. It's interesting to me how many of our topics intersect because so many weird things that people do are coming from the same origin: low self-esteem, codependency, a desire to be valued, a desire to make yourself important, a desire to have other people think good things of you. I'm sorry to say, you got to take all of that and throw it in the garbage. You got to live your life for you, which is not to say you shouldn't care about other people or act like you care about other people, but you can't live your life in order to make other people think well of you.
I had a friend who did an internship in Poland working for an aircraft company. And she said it was sort of right after Poland wasn't communist anymore. But she was so stressed out by her work colleagues because they truly did not care about their job at all. And she said if the phone was ringing during lunch, they would just pick up the phone receiver and drop it back down. We got to get this email out. And they would go, okay, for what? Who cares? Because they didn't have this crazy capitalist cultural thing drilled into their brains. And guess what? Their airplanes were the most famous of their kind because they were good at what they did, but they just did their job. And I feel like we all just need to do our jobs and clock out and go home.
And when an interviewer asks you, why do you want this job? If the answer isn't just because I like money and eating and living inside, like it should be.
You could say that, but it probably won't get you the job. I wouldn't just work anywhere though. I wouldn't work anywhere. Actually, I don't work anywhere. I work for myself and I like that place because it's the one that I built. So Virginia, if somebody wants to find out more about your workaholism in the comedy sphere, how would they do that?
You can see all of my dates and things I've done and videos of me and just every dang thing at Badinia, BADINIA.com. You can also follow me on TikTok where I am Badinia. And you can follow me on Instagram where I promote my shows. And that's also Badinia. If you would like to write us on the show and you have a question or comment, or you want to send us a picture of a capybara doing something cute, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you have a work opportunity for us, if you would like us to promote something or show up somewhere or do a live podcast, you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, where can people find you online?
They can find me on TikTok. I'm now boasting 782 followers. I've been solidly at 782 for 3 weeks now. So if you want to follow me, it would be much appreciated. That's I am Laura Ryan on TikTok. If you want to find out more about my professional life, you can go to lauraryan.org. If you live in the state of Texas, I would love to work with you. If you want to follow our podcast on Instagram, you can go to My Sisters a Therapist Instagram. And if you want to go to our website and just listen to all the podcasts back to back to back,
Just binge them.
mysistersatherapist.com.
And if during the week, someone says something that reminds you of something you learned on one of our podcasts, why not let them know? Hey, you know who was talking about this? The girls on My Sister's a Therapist, which is a great podcast that I listen to.
If you think about getting My Sister's a Therapist podcast tattooed across your forehead, I'm not going to be mad.
Don't do it in a mirror because then it'll be backwards. Have someone else do it. Laura, this is the part of the podcast where you will read a comment or a nice review someone has left for us. Do you have something to share this week?
I certainly do. This is a 5-star review, my favorite kind, from Amazon Music. This is from a listener who is a little bit obsessive about this podcast, and he goes by the name of Robbie Ryan. The title is A Vital Podcast for Relationships and Mental Health. This podcast is delightful, and not just because 2 of my sisters, one of whom is a therapist, co-hosted. This is some fun stuff with great insights, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you, paraphrasing Dua Lipa, are part of the problem. They go all in on relationships, gender roles, and the patriarchy. If you're a cishet male like me, a lot of the material will be enlightening. Give it a listen. Over 30,000 other people at this writing have. And it's free. So what do you have to lose? Be prepared to hear a lot of discussion about my mother. She's their mother too. Past relationships and our dad. Basically, this whole episode is dedicated to him. There's so much about our dad. He needed his own episode, and he has his own drinking game. So listen to it, enjoy it, and share it with others. Just don't listen to it and start a random group chat with the hosts. They will be confused, as I typically listen to the podcast after they've been recorded. And Robbie says at the end, in the immortal words of Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn,
We can make it, baby.
me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.